Welcome to Tissue Talks. My name is Lisa KIRSEBOM. The next 2 hours, we will present to you industry experts, market-leading tissue producers, and representatives from Valmet and its partners. The purpose is to share views on how to constantly move forward in a changing environment. We're streaming this event live from Karlstad, Sweden, and you can join the show by sending your comments and questions through the chat. Right next to the live streaming window, you have the chat window, and there you can write whenever during the show. But first of all, we'd like you to do something else for us. Take a selfie right now and send it to hello@valmet.com. hello@valmet.com. And we'll put you up on the big screen behind me here. Oh, look at that. If it isn't Jörg Engels from Kreuzau, Germany, the paper process manager at Metze Tissue Corporation. And if you want to do like Jörg, take a picture of yourself and send it to hello@valmet.com. The theme for this year's event is A Green Perspective of an Untold Future. And yes, here comes two guys with a green perspective, Anders Björn and Jan Eriksson. These two in kayaks are for sure an untold future and a beautiful image. Tissue Talks are divided into 4 parts. Expecting the unexpected, a new perspective on raw materials, environmental footprint, wipe them out or imprint a path forward, and finally, sustainable growth. Hello, that's a really nice way to get here. The kayaking, sustainable and unexpected too. And also a way to get close to this really beautiful environment you have around here, right?
Yes, that's true.
Yep. I just saw some nice pictures from the earlier events, but this year we're doing it slightly differently, right?
Yes, COVID gave us a real challenge and we could not host the normal tissue seminar that we do. We had to be creative and find new solutions to interact with our customers and our partners around the world. So that's why we have created, as we have today, Tissue Talks live, and we have next week Tissue Talk Dive.
Right. A green perspective on untold future. Tell me more about this. What can we expect from today's program?
Yeah, we will talk about sustainability in our customer lives and consumers' perspective, and also about new fibers that can be utilized to improve that perspective. And this will be the overview, this Tissue Talks. And next week we will do the Tissue Dive. We will go into the details about those sessions that we're now going to present. And we in Valmet, we are very happy to have our partners to participate in the session. We have Rottneros, pulp manufacturer from Sweden, and also MAN Engineering Solutions from Switzerland.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jan and Anders, and see you later.
Thank you.
Now, if you haven't already, take that selfie and send it to hello@valmet.com so we can put you up on the screen and have you join us. Now, time for the first theme of today. Every day, we get new reports on COVID-19 and how it affects different sectors in the community. But what about the tissue industry? Can we see any consequences so far? And what can we expect in the coming years? Is it even possible to predict something? We have an expert with us to help us with these questions. Welcome, Mr. Esko Utala. You are well known in the industry as a representative from Rising Fast Market, and I know you're following the tissue industry closely. So what have you observed so far since the COVID-19 outbreak?
Well, I have to say that the global tissue industry has been hit and will continue to be hit by very contradictory developments because of the COVID-19 issue. and the consequences will be quite disparate between the consumer tissue and away from home tissue markets. That's actually my main message of this interview. Tissue is one of the daily necessities needed in a modern society, and during the coronavirus time, this has become very clear. Throughout the world, people started panic buying of toilet paper, which was one of the main targets, together with disinfection fluids and also durables or foodstuffs. Through this hoarding of tissue goods, many sales outlets had empty tissue aisles for weeks, and companies reported sales doubling and all stock sold out. And also violence erupted with customers fighting for the last pack of toilet paper. And sales were booming, actually. For example, in Germany, the index of toilet paper sales was more than 3 times above the normal level in mid-March. But when shelves and mill storages were emptied and mills were not able to correspond to the demand, sales fell down in April before starting to normalize again.
What does this mean for the tissue producers?
Well, tissue mills turned to be a strategic assets. Tissue trucks of their loads were even hijacked. At least in Hong Kong and Germany this happened. On the other hand, tissue mills have reported full capacity utilization for months and weeks, and extra shifts were organized for converting in Europe and North America, and the demand for additional parent roll purchases picked sharply up. In China, mills in Hubei were down for weeks, and companies needed to make all efforts to keep their supply chain working. But overcapacity in China helped so that no major shortages emerged, whereas reserve capacities were limited in Europe and North America. That's why we had the empty tissue aisles. US tissue mills have recorded all-time high capacity utilization rates, 99.8% in March and 99.5% in April. So the main figure is still missing.
So what are the biggest challenges for the tissue mills?
Well, maybe the main issue was at the beginning, at least, the logistic issues, because they were a problem. They made problems. For a couple of months, the harbors were working with limited capabilities, and containers were not returning quickly enough. For tissue trade, this has been a difficult issue, and for example, Chinese tissue exports to the United States collapsed in March and April. On the other hand, for new projects, travel restraints have been a problem, and so I think that most new tissue projects, startups have seen an extra delay for 2 or 3 months, as startup teams have not been able to travel as planned. And services have increasingly been moved to online or phone consultation rather than visiting the mills.
What future impact do you see on the aspects of demand and supply?
Well, in the short term, so the impact for consumer tissue is definitely positive. For the away-from-home business, 2020 will be a bad year due to many issues, including less traveling and hotel lodging, more home office working, and likely so 10 to 20% of eating places will not reopen because of liquidity issues, or some entrepreneurs have given up their businesses. This is especially in the US the case. In the longer term, there may be also some positive factors helping tissue consumption. It is likely that people continue to increasingly think hygienic issues, such as hand washing, which needs also hand drying. And reportedly, some air-blowing hand dryers have been turned off in the United States, Europe, and Japan for the fear that they are virus links. This has happened in the fast service restaurant chains and also in some airports and some other issues, but it's a slow process because you need to have the towel dispensers there, and this takes place all the time, but it's not really one night. You cannot change everything overnight. In the consumer tissue, households are likely to keep higher stocks than before. Some reports say that people are having tissue in their home storage now for 2 weeks instead of 1 week. So that's like that kind of typical. So I don't know whether it's true, but I mean, it's likely that people will have more. But that's a one-time effect only. But just to think about all in all, so the COVID-19 pandemic may not be a negative issue for the tissue business. First of all, now tissue mills have been benefiting from high demand and reasonable pulp prices, and only the dedicated away from homes have been hit by sales problems. But even they have been able to sell parent rolls or stock keeping units, which can be distributed through channels ending to consumers rather than away from home users. I have to say that the use of tissue is of habitual nature and cannot be very much affected by economic recession or pandemics like this current one. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Esko. We will remain on the topic of COVID-19 for a little bit longer, and we have someone coming with some real in-depth knowledge on consumer hygiene behavior. With extensive experience in the hygiene industry, working for large corporations such as Unilever and Kimberly-Clark, currently chairman of European Tissue Symposium, Fanis Papakostas will now give us his views on the coronavirus impact on consumer hygiene trends. Fanis, welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your interest.
Thank you. Do you believe that the corona pandemic has affected the consumer's perception of hygiene and really changed their behavior?
Oh, absolutely. This must have been the most significant change of consumer behavior, excuse me, regarding hygiene and tissue paper in the last century, probably. People wash their hands and surfaces much more frequently than before. Therefore, there's a need of hygienic drying. We often sanitize surfaces and our hands as well. Then there's a need for hygienic drying as well. The awareness of the importance of personal hygiene is definitely up.
So in what areas do we see the biggest changes? Is that the away from home segment or the consumer?
At the end, the result will be the same. Temporarily, there will be a long-term positive effect in both consumer and away from home at the end. But at the beginning, when the pandemic crisis started, we saw an instant heavy demand of for consumer tissue products, those what people are using at home. And this was something like a natural reaction. Of course, the key reason was that people were spending almost all their time at home, but also the fact that they naturally responded by using more and more tissue paper, considering it essential to maintain their personal hygiene. You remember the empty shelves in the US and in Europe, etc. They were alarmed, and some of them they even overreacted, reaching hysterical levels and cautiousness. After a few weeks, there was some adjustment, and the supplies were normalized, and there were maybe some more adjustment coming up. However, I want to believe that the stabilization level will be higher than before the pandemic, because the perception about hygiene has changed. By the time passing, governments started lifting the restrictions and people started going out. That is adjusting the away from home slowly but steadily, the away from home volumes, and the sales are increasing again. In any case, people need to maintain higher hygiene than before. This will eventually boost the demand for tissue paper. Therefore, also in the away from home area, this demand is going to exceed the levels that we were used to see before the pandemic. To me, one thing is certain. Many of the new habits regarding the hygienic precautions, although they may lose some of their initial impact, they are here to stay. And this is overall good for the business.
So do you see a battle now between the tissue industry and other drying businesses?
Yes, clearly. All the alternative categories to tissue will be affected by the consumer's clear preference to use tissue. and some of them may lose their businesses. I'm talking about wipes, alternative things, air dryers, etc. They may try to shift the battle of arguments to other areas where they believe, or they're trying to convince people that they may have an advantage. For example, the sustainability, as they like to do very often. However, sooner or later, the general public will know that the tissue paper industry in Europe is supplied with pulp. Pulp is the key raw material coming from the renewable forestry. And more than that, apart from offering the best hygienic solutions, it has a full sustainability agenda with the continuous improvement of every element of the supply chain.
Right. So what is your overall conclusion on this?
As a conclusion, I would say the news are good. In fact, they're very good. The tissue industry is essential to global health and pretty sustainable. We're proud of it. Consumers are getting better informed and they behave accordingly, using more tissue paper. It is good for them and good for the business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fanis, and thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you.
So, let's leave the virus and our hygiene behavior aside for a moment and talk about our shopping behavior instead. For consumers, shopping has never been more convenient, but this has also led to new demand on the retailers. That is a topic for our next guest. Patrick Boateng is the founder and principal at True Source Links and serves on Tissue World's advisory board and is a regular speaker at the Tissue World events. We spoke to him earlier this week and asked, what are the main challenges for retailers?
So today, technology has made it possible for the customer to shop everywhere, whether online or in store. They have varieties of options that help them to get what they want. The omni-shopper behavior, it's a type of behavior that is influenced by technology. That is, when you talk about loyalty, when you talk about pricing, they have a short attention span to pick what they want. Therefore, a retailer must be efficient to deliver as quickly as possible. Otherwise, the omni-shopper has multiple options, whereby once you delay in satisfying their needs, they quickly switch to your competitors. So as a retailer in this modern environment, you have to be in a position to understand the omni-shopper needs, understand what means more to them. Without being in this position, you are preparing yourself to go out of business. So if you look at convenience, because of the technology, shoppers want to have the same experience when shopping online, same as shopping in store. And they want this experience to be frictionless, seamless, anytime they want it. So retailers who have studied the customer behavior, invested heavily in providing convenience for the customer, are being rewarded. And I gave an example as what we are seeing with Amazon, whereby you have about 42% of branded companies generating about half of their online business or e-commerce business through Amazon, just because that is where customers are. They get what they want at the fastest rate when they shop on Amazon. What I'd like to add to this is sustainability, because whether it's government agencies. Today's consumer is also looking for businesses that care about the environment. Therefore, every retailer or every business must prove to the customer that what goes into the final product, it's safe for the environment. And you can do this by ensuring more transparency in what you do. It's not just about the price, it's also about what is near and dear to the hearts of the customer.
Patrick Boateng, founder and principal of True Source Links. So we just heard that businesses need to be transparent and prove to the customers that their products are safe for the environment. Our next guest is Sebastian Stiller from EPD International AB. He has a wide experience in helping companies to be transparent and fulfill environmental legislation through life cycle assessments. Welcome on stage, Sebastian. It's all yours.
Thank you, Lisa. And good day, ladies and gentlemen. We don't know about the exact what, how, and when, but we see it coming, and it's going to be comprehensive and consequential. Political activism in the European Union to actually build the green circular economy is strong and very real. Just look at the outlines of Timmermans' new environmental Green Deal. In this Green Deal, the legislator will push for mandatory requirements that will force you as a manufacturer to improve the environmental performance of your products. They also will look into means to penalize those amongst us who will not be able to uphold the new preset requirements. And if we can trust the DOP and the CE mark discussions and actual inclusion of environmental indicators into this CE mark, we can foresee a future in which the European Union will come to a point and say, if you don't comply, we will push you out of the market. So we see a lot of companies now finding new ways to actually meet the growing need for environmental information about their products, but also about their organizations and their value chains. And in response, we see that companies actually do sign up to SDG initiatives, like the science-based targets, and it would say in more general terms towards circularity and working towards carbon neutrality. We also see, very fortunately, that there are pioneering companies who actually have ramped up, have accepted this challenge, and actually built very convincing roadmaps in which they do not only include, but also actively engage with their stakeholders in their way to their carbon neutrality. But once they are there and they have actually accepted that challenge, they very quickly realize that when you want to communicate in a very credible way with your stakeholders, you need objective, comparable, and high-quality data. Because you don't want to be in a space where you as a company are being confronted with greenwashing accusations. So if we look at the ISO standards, there are actually 3 standards that you can use to communicate the environmental impact of your products and services. These standards, they come for different communication needs, but also with different environmental claims. So if you look at the type 1, which is the eco-label, and you know them as the Nordic Swan or the Blue Angel in Germany, manufacturers typically use these to communicate the environmental aspects of their products, I would say in a highly simplified way. You have the type 2, which is the self-declared eco-label, and then you have the type 3, which is the environmental product declaration, the EPD in short. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that they're my absolute favorite, because I'm selling them obviously, but also because it is the only instrument that gives you the full picture of the environmental performance of your product in a life cycle perspective. They are the open book, so they do not only show you the good, like the eco-labels do, but also the bad and the really ugly stuff about the environmental performance in your product. So let's call it hyper-transparency. And now you may actually criticize me because saying, yeah, an EPD is nice and well, but it's actually very expensive. And you were right, but I can say that a lot of innovation has been going on, and the solutions out there that allow you to do an LCA in a very cost-efficient way. And let's be honest, if it's true what's coming, what I just said, you will most probably not get around with having to do LCAs anyways. So I urge you to actually start working, start doing your homework, start looking into LCAs, and actually start understanding your product better than anybody else in this world, because otherwise you're going to be confronted with these kind of claims. If you want to find out more, please join me on my deep dive next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sebastian.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Now I say welcome back to Anders Björn and Jan Eriksson from Valmet. Hello, Anders and Jan.
Hello.
We have some reflections from the audience, so let's look at them. International cooperation seems to be critical for our future. Yeah, that seems very true. Happy to be part of a business supporting health.
Yes, I think we agree to that.
Yeah.
And maybe there are some opportunities now to create some new products to respond to that need that the market sees.
Yeah, very true. Interesting to see if COVID-19 will change our behavior in the long run.
Yeah, I think we see now that there is a very high attention to hygiene. And there is also other sort of diseases that has more or less gone away during the spring now, depending on that we have better hygiene. And I think there is a learning in society how important hygiene is, and of course tissue has an impact there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, do you have any additional reflections on the program as you've been listening to?
I think, as Jan Eliasson said also here, that international cooperation between countries and companies, especially when it comes to using new technology, because we don't have a planet B.
Yeah.
And this event is part of that in a way. We're bringing different companies together, different ideas, and learning from each other. We need to learn from each other. We cannot do everything ourselves.
Very true. Thanks, Jan. Thanks, Anders.
Thank you.